My entitled daughter, she called the cops on me. Well, why would a daughter do that, you might ask? Did I do something like hit her? Of course not. Let me tell you my crime of choice. I reduced her allowance. Hello everyone. You guys can call me OP. I'm 55, female. I'm dealing with a family problem right now, and part of me feels like it's my own fault for letting the problem get so big. I tried to sweep it under the rug, but I should have confronted this aspect of my life a long time ago. I should have put my foot down, because now things are getting completely out of hand. I have a lot of background information to go over, so this is going to be kinda long. I just need to vent about what's going on lately, and I could use any advice any of you are willing to throw my way. To get things started right away, I just want to clarify that I do love my daughter Danita from the bottom of my heart. She has many good traits, and she used to be bright, studious, industrious, and a whole lot more compassionate and less self-centered than she is now. I'm not sure what went wrong with her, but I suppose I was too lenient with her. It's hard not to blame yourself when your child is making mistakes left and right, despite putting in what seems like every effort on your part to steer the child in the right direction. I have unfortunately had to reach the conclusion that my efforts, until now, simply have not been enough. I think part of my leniency towards Danita stems from the divorce between me and my ex-husband Hank, who, by the way, is Danita's father. A divorce can be rough on a kid, I should know. I went through a terrible divorce when I was growing up, and I did not want to inflict that upon my own child. Unfortunately, Hank and I had some rather irreconcilable differences we could not work through, and we decided it would be best for the whole family if the two of us separated. All things considered, Hank and my divorce was rather amicable, but it still came with the usual stress that comes with a divorce. We're not at each other's throats, and we stayed friends on certain levels and always communicated about how we should approach parenting Danita. Of course, there was some slight competition between us after the divorce. We didn't realize we were doing it, but I think on a subconscious level, Hank and I were inadvertently spoiling Danita in an effort to make up for the divorce. Perhaps we were trying to, I don't know, win her over? As they so often say, hindsight is 20/20, and while it sounds like a tired cliche, many cliches do ring the truth. Danita was always a rather needy, demanding child at times, but she balanced it out with her good traits. Over time, she began to grow more and more demanding, and she became quite adept at manipulating Hank and me into getting what she wanted. Whether it was nice clothing, a new purse, new electronics, or just a wad of cash. I wish Hank and I had been more diligent and aware, but we all too often chose the path of least resilience, which was simply giving in to whatever Danita wanted. After all, this was manageable and satisfactory at first. She was getting decent grades and staying involved in her extracurricular activities, and as far as Hank and I were aware, Danita was staying out of trouble. Of course, most your parents out there will know that we often don't know our children as well as we believe we do. Danita starts slacking a bit in school. It's easy to slack in high school when there's so many distractions for a teenager, especially nowadays with the pressure of social media and all that nonsense. I tried to cut Danita some leeway, but every once in a while I would have to ground her or punish her in some way for getting unsatisfactory grades. This punishment typically worked as they should, and Danita would suitably straighten up her act. She got just a high enough GPA to get into a decent college in the state, and Hank and I paid for every bit of her college expenses, including tuition, room, board, meals, everything. College was where things started to go a bit off the rails for Danita. Boy, oh boy. If I had $1 for every time I stressed myself out over something Danita was up to, I'd be a billionaire. I think the only reason I was able to rein in her behavior from time to time when she was living at home was because of exactly that. She was living in my house and had little choice but to follow my rules. But once she got off to college, Hank and I made it quite clear to Danita that if she could not maintain her grades, we would not be around to bail her out. She was a big girl and had to act like one. This was not easy for Danita as it turned out. Danita fell into a group of friends, and at first I was happy for her that she had made friends so quickly at college. Many young adults go off to college and experience depression. Well, Danita was the opposite. She was having too much fun. Turns out her friends were a bunch of spoiled rich kids and she got involved with partying. Drugs, alcohol, going to clubs, staying out all night, skipping classes. It only took one semester at college for Danita to be placed on academic probation. She straightened up her act a tad, but she still fell far short of Hank and expectations. We wanted great things for our daughter, but she continued to put in the bare minimum effort in classes just to avoid failing. She graduated with C's and low B's in almost every course, and she chose to major in philosophy, so there isn't a whole lot she can do with her degree in our town. Not to mention there was the embarrassment of Danita getting an underage drinking charge at 19 and possession of marijuana at 20. The first time she got arrested, she called me up begging and crying for me to go bail her out of jail. I drove all the way to her university 2 hours away from home and bailed her out. The whole time I knew I was making a mistake, but I could not stand the thought of my daughter sitting in a jail cell at night. The second time she got arrested, she did not even tell me about it because she knew that I would tell her to solve her own problems. I already told her I was not going to bail her out again, so she called Hank. Hank was a bit more hardened than I am, but even he eventually relented once Danita started up her hooting and hollering, begging and pleading, and in hindsight her behavior was immature and pathetic, and both times Hank and I essentially rewarded her screw-up. So in addition to spending most of her time at college on academic probation, she was also on legal probation. She claimed to be unable to find a job near the college and still be able to juggle her schoolwork. So Hank and I took turns paying all of Danita's monthly probation fees and such. Another big mistake. We should have forced her to do what was mature, but guys, we did not. Meanwhile, Danita was able to keep partying and goofing off the entire time she was on probation. She only had to take one drug test the entire time, and she later revealed to me that she had used another friend's urine. Ugh, how dishonest. Probation's supposed to be a chance at rehabilitation. It's a chance to straighten up and turn one's life around. Unfortunately, the only lesson probation taught Danita was how to game the system and become more adept at breaking rules and slacking around. Still, Hank and I were immensely proud of Danita when she got her degree, even though we both knew deep down that the degree was useless and would not help her in getting a job. Still, we remained hopeful that graduation would be the start of a new chapter in which Danita would turn over a new leaf and finally become the great adult I'd always hoped she would become. Danita moved back into my house after graduation, and yes, I was fine with this. I knew she would likely need a week or two to decompress and get some relaxation after all the studying she has done for the finals. I was proud of her for graduating, like I said, so I had no problem with Danita taking a little time off. And of course, I expected her to start looking for jobs after this little relaxation period was over. I started gently reminding her. Hey, Danita, why don't you go look for a job? Oh, I can't today, Mom. I'm going to the club with my friend in an hour or so. I have to get ready. Ugh. Or it'd be some other similarly flippant and pointless excuse, and she was running up a credit card bill, and that was on top of the hefty allowance I was giving her. I wanted her to have some spending money in the meantime while she was looking for a job and interviewing, and the allowance was, only on the condition that she satisfies those requirements. 2 weeks soon turned into a month, and time began to pass, and the only thing she seemed to be doing with her time was shopping, going to clubs, dancing, drinking beer, and other pointless activities. I decided enough was enough. Danita and I were beginning to have heated arguments over her behavior. She always had some excuse, or she would twist things around and try to blame me. Her manipulative ways would get to me, and it hurt to see my daughter behave this way, and I knew I had to do something. I had connections in the town from a job at the local law firm. I was not involved in law, I was a secretary, but it was a good law firm, and I've been there long enough that I was making a ton of money. I had some pull at the job. My boss told me that his friend needed a secretary at his new business across town, and it was an investment firm, and I just figured this would be a great opportunity for Danita to get her foot in the door at a real business. Not to sound rude or dismissive, but there were simply no opportunities in town for a club-obsessed wannabe fashionista with nothing to her name but a philosophy degree and a whole boatload of debt. I told Danita I'd set up an interview for her. Immediately, Danita was trying to come up with some excuse to get out at the meeting, and I laid it plain and simple to her. Danita, you have no choice in this matter. You're going to the interview or I'm cutting off your allowance. She pitched a fit and whined a bit, but then she finally sheepishly agreed to go to the interview the next day. Then the next day rolled around and I got a call from a friend of my boss asking where Danita was at. He told me bluntly that things were not looking good for her, where the job was concerned if she lacked the professionalism and tact to even call and reschedule the interview if she couldn't make it. I had no choice but to agree, but I was embarrassed at how poorly this reflected on my skills as a mother. Me and my boss stuck our necks out for Danita, and she made a mockery of me. The thing is, I knew Danita had no excuse for why she supposedly could not make the interview. It wasn't that she could not make the interview, she simply didn't want to make the interview. I barged into her bedroom and asked her why she was being so disrespectful. I gave her an earful and started to yell, and I simply could not control myself any longer. Danita told me without a care in the world that the reason she skipped the interview was because she had a hangover from drinking so many cocktails at the club last night. Wow. I would appreciate her honesty, but come on, there's no respect for her honesty. She had no shame or remorse for her actions, and it became clear to me then and there in that moment that I've raised a selfish, spoiled brat. It was as if Danita was a 5-year-old trapped in a 22-year-old's body. I told Danita to shut up. Shut her trap. I told her in clear and concise terms that her allowance has been reduced until she could prove to me that she could get a job and be responsible like every other functioning adult on this planet. Danita began sobbing and flopping around like a toddler who just had her chocolate milk taken. I felt no sympathy for her. I was disgusted by Danita. Danita told me she was going to tell her dad all about this, and she said that she would make him pay the remainder of the allowance so it would be as if I never reduced it. I laughed in that brat's face and told her good luck with that. I knew Hank would want no part of the crap, and she's a grown woman, and it's time for her to start acting like one. I don't know, am I being too harsh, or am I perhaps not being harsh enough? After seeing the type of daughter I've raised, I'm having serious doubts about my parenting abilities. I appear to have created a monster, and now I must reap what I've sown. What's up, everybody? Mr. Reddito here. So today's update is about to get a lot more crazy. If you guys are enjoying today's story, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more daily videos. Here's your first update. Hello to all the people out there, OP here, and I am back for an update. I appreciate all the supportive words and constructive criticism. I appreciate how honest and blunt you guys are. The words were not easy to read, but I had to accept my responsibility for all this mess going on with Danita. If I could turn back time and change my parenting decisions, I certainly would. I wish I could say things are getting better, but it appears the situation's only getting worse. So let me cut right to the chase and get you up to speed on what's been happening since my initial post. So Danita did exactly what she said she was going to do after all. She normally does not keep her word, but I guess when she's motivated enough by her selfish and immaturity, she can actually make herself get off the couch and do something. Only her version of doing something was driving over to Hank's house to badmouth me and whine about me to him, all the while asking him to fork over a bunch of allowance money so she could continue living a flippant life of partying and wasting time. Well, this little plan Danita concocted did not go down the way that she was expecting it to. Hank called me and told me about the encounter right after it took place, so I was already quite well prepared for when Danita got back home. Hank told me that he had a few choice words for Danita that she did not seem to appreciate, and she threw a temper tantrum and starts to scream and cry about how we hate her and how life isn't fair, blah blah blah. The usual stuff you normally only hear from a grounded 12-year-old and not a grown woman with a college degree. Hank told Danita she needs to get a job. Hank is having financial issues on his own right now, and he certainly cannot take on this added responsibility of supporting his grown adult daughter so she can have all the free time in the world so she can drink margaritas in the club. I knew Danita would be petulant and whiny, and even potentially throw a temper tantrum and ready and itching for a fight when she returned home for her most pointless excursion to Hank's house. Well, what I was not expecting was just how out of hand things were going to get. I still can't believe what happened, and I'm just hoping the worst is behind us and this can blow over. You see, Danita starts making rude comments about how I, quote, bled her dad dry, with alimony payments, child support, and whatnot, and I guess Danita did not realize it was Hank's responsibility as a parent to provide child support and alimony. He was doing what was right by the family, and he did not contest this when we had a divorce. He actually happily agreed. It was no use even trying to explain this to Danita, or even make an attempt, however. She was only trying to get under my skin, but it was working. She kept talking smack about me, and my anger got the best of me, and I raised my hand and I slapped her. She ran out of the room crying and screaming about how awful I was, and then she slammed her bedroom door shut. The vibe in the house is pretty tense right now, and I'm hoping things can get back to normal after this. Update number 2. OP here. Unfortunately, I've got another update for you all, and Danita keeps sinking to new lows and continues to disappoint me as a parent. I can't believe this is the daughter I've raised. At the same time, I'd hoped after slapping Danita last night that we can get past all this junk and realize that, well, what is most important? I don't get why Danita's being so petulant when all she has to do is get a dang job and contribute to the household. It's so easy for every other functioning able adult in the world. Why is she entitled? So much so that she feels exempt from this most basic of societal expectations. I didn't expect peaches and unicorns and rainbows when I woke up this morning, not by a long shot. But I can tell you, also, I wasn't expecting to wake up to a couple of police officers in my living room waiting for me to answer some questions. My first thought was that Danita had gone out the night before and done something stupid. I was in a daze from just waking up from my slumber, but then I noticed Danita standing a few feet behind the police with her arms crossed and a smug, bratty look on her face, and I immediately knew she was behind this stunt. The police told me that Danita has accused me of physical and mental abuse. She claims she felt unsafe with me in the house, and I guess Danita was dumb enough to think police would just readily accept her claims, without even a second thought, and that they would simply escort me from the premises so she could just turn my house into her own personal party pad. Yeah, get real, Danita. So, once I explained the reality of the situation, the police officers start to laugh. They told Danita point blank that I've broken no laws, and they reminded her that Danita was the one living in my home. I felt vindicated by what the officers said, and another futile plan of Danita had been foiled. Maybe now she would grow up a bit. Oh boy, I was wrong. As soon as the police officers left, I told Danita she could move out of the house if she felt unsafe living here. I would not be too sad to see her leave at this point because I need a break from all this dang drama. Update number 3. Hey guys, I hope you're all doing well. I'm here with another update for you, and if you've been reading though far, you'll know that Danita tried to press abuse charges against me. Yeah, funny, I guess, considering you have to be a child to be a victim of child abuse. She's a freeloader living in my home, and of course the police absolutely sided with me. I mean, come on. Well, Danita took my advice to find someplace else to live if she was feeling so unsafe around me. She packed up her crap and called her boyfriend Tyrese to pick her up so she could stay with him at his apartment. Mind you, he's 37. That was a week ago, and I don't know, I just assumed Danita was probably clubbing, hanging out, partying, drinking, and acting a fool with Tyrese and her gaggle of spoiled rich kid friends. I was enjoying the peace and quiet I was getting from the house for once. Well, I was at the mall today doing some shopping since I've not treated myself to a day out in town in so long. Danita had taken up so much of my time and energy, and I began to neglect my own needs. What I saw at the mall was shocking. There she was, working at the McDonald's. Danita! I could not believe it. She looked embarrassed and upset when I approached her, and I jokingly congratulated her on the job. Danita began begging and pleading to be allowed to move back in with me, and I told her she had made her bed and now she has to sleep in it. I told her I gave her a chance. Chance after chance after chance to be responsible, and she blew it. I could see Danita was on the verge of tears, but I knew she had to learn a lesson if there were to ever be any hope of her changing. Update number 4. I can't seem to catch a break. I have another update for you. I was pleased to see Danita working at the McDonald's, right? Frankly, I was hoping to see that she's gotten the job at all, but I guess Danita took it harshly when I told her that she would not be allowed to move back in just because she happened to get a job at McDonald's. Looks like she got Tyrese's army to go after me. I woke up to a ton of harassment, and you could say rude voicemails even. Text, phone calls, all my social profiles flooded with abuse. You see, Tyrese runs a popular TikTok account where he posts memes and videos, and he has a legion of followers, and it appears he sent them all after me to troll me and harass me. Where he made his mistake was posting a bunch of untrue slander about me on his page. I guess he believed all the lies and junk Danita had told him about me, and he probably thought he was just sticking up for his girlfriend. Poor guy, huh? But I was going to make him regret getting involved at all. I called the police and reported him for a case of slander. The police called me about half an hour later after I report him and told me Tyrese has been arrested. They asked me if I want to press charges, and I said yes. I was done being bullied by these fools. Sure enough, I get a call from Danita begging me to bail Tyrese out of jail. I asked her if she was suffering from some sort of mental delusion because I told her to get professional help if she thought I'd turn around and bail this clown out. I hung up the phone on little old Danita. Final update. Hello people, this is it. I think this chapter is wrapped up for now, although it did not end quite the way I was hoping for. Still, even though what happened today was difficult, I think this is the only way Danita's going to learn a lesson about responsibility in her life. I guess Danita did not appreciate me pressing charges against Tyrese and getting him thrown in jail. I had no sympathy for the guy after he defamed me and slandered me, and Danita wanted revenge. Of course, I expected she would try to get even somehow, but I did not expect her to do what she ended up doing, guys. Are you ready for this? I saw her car pulling into the driveway, and I got tense immediately because I knew there was about to be an argument. But then I saw all her rich, spoiled brat friends come out of the car as well, and that's when I noticed they were carrying eggs. Danita motioned towards my house, and they all start pelting my property with eggs. My garden, my bushes, everything was covered in eggs. I was so ticked off. Clearly Danita had no respect for me and was only going to try to make my life harder as long as she was allowed to roam free. I had no choice but to call the law on my own daughter. I stood back from the window and watched Danita and her crew continue to pelt my house with eggs. Until the police finally showed up and stopped them, and I could see Danita begin to cry and scream about how life wasn't fair. It hurt watching her get handcuffed and arrested, but deep down I knew this was the only way she would be forced to grow up. This would be her third criminal charge, and I had no intention of helping her pay for a lawyer. Danita, my own daughter, was going to sit in jail. I'm upset that it had to come to this, I really am, but hey, I think Danita getting arrested and spending some quality time in a jail cell will give her the wake-up call she truly needs. If this does not help her, I'm cutting all ties with her, but I still have hope. Anyways, thank you guys for listening, and just Let me know. What would you do if this was your daughter? Well, this is one of those stories where the daughter, Danita, was completely out of control. I mean, to the point where she was spoiled rotten, and then she gets all these rich friends, and they start going around egging the house of OP and just vandalizing and taking things way too far. And I actually was surprised with some of the comments. A lot of people were saying, you know what, it isn't really Danita's fault. It was the way she was brought up. And okay, that could be true to some extent, but also you have to understand OP was saying, I'm doing this to teach her a lesson. And yes, some people might not agree with it, and I will say the comment section was split, about 50-50. A lot of people were blaming OP, and a lot of people were saying, no, this is all Danita. I want to know your thoughts about this, guys, so do drop a comment down below and let's discuss it. My name's Mr. Reddito, and I narrate stories like this every day, so if you want daily stories, just hit the subscribe button. I'll see you guys tomorrow, and remember, it's cool to be kind. See ya.